I'll never forget the sound of her laugh. It wasn't loud. It wasn't wild. It was quiet, sharp, almost like she felt sorry for me. My fiancée, Emily, stood in the center of her parents' living room, surrounded by people who had never worked a day outside an office with marble floors. And there I was, holding a glass I suddenly didn't want anymore, trying to explain my startup, my dream, to a room full of people who already decided it wasn't worth anything. Her father asked me a simple question. "So Daniel, what's this little software thing you're working on?" Little. That word hit harder than anything. I opened my mouth to explain, but Emily beat me to it. "Oh, don't worry," she said with a soft laugh. "He's always building something. It's just another one of his small projects." Small, like everything I'd ever done had already failed. Her cousins laughed politely. Her mother gave me that look, the one people use when they pretend they're impressed, but really feel embarrassed for you. And Emily, the woman I thought believed in me, just kept smiling like it was all a harmless joke. Inside, something shifted. Not anger, not rage, just a quiet, heavy truth settling into my chest. She didn't see me. Not really. Not the way I hoped she did. I stood there, feeling every pair of eyes on me, waiting for me to prove myself. Or prove them right. In that moment, I felt small, not because of my dream, but because of their laughter. But here's the part they never expected. While they were laughing, I was making a promise to myself. A promise so clear it almost felt like someone whispered it into my ear. One day, they will respect what I built. One day, they'll understand what that little project really was. And when that day comes, I won't need their approval. I didn't know it then, but that laugh, that small, cutting sound, was the spark that started everything that came next. Everything. People often think the moment someone laughs at your dream is what breaks you. But the truth is, those moments only hurt because of everything that came before. So before the story moves forward, I need to take you back. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, in a small house that shook every time a train passed by. My dad worked long hours at a repair shop. My mom did whatever job she could find, cleaning, babysitting, helping neighbors. We didn't have much, but they always pushed one message into my head: build something that matters. Maybe that's why I fell in love with business so young. When other kids played video games, I was drawing out ideas for small companies in a worn-out notebook. By high school, I was buying used electronics, fixing them, and selling them online. I wasn't rich, but I felt something powerful: control, purpose, independence. Then, years later, I met Emily Wright. And her world was nothing like mine. Emily came from money. Not reckless money, but old, polished, carefully protected wealth. Her family, the Wrights, owned a manufacturing firm, the kind of company that built its reputation over generations. They lived in a house where the floors didn't creak, where everything smelled like new wood, and where people smiled, but always measured you quietly. Emily was warm when we first met. She liked my ambition. She said my passion was refreshing. But over time, I noticed something. She was proud of me when my ideas sounded impressive, but embarrassed when they didn't make sense to her world. In her family, they saw me as a nice guy from the outside looking in. Someone with potential, as they politely called it, but not someone who truly belonged at their table. I felt the difference every time I walked into their home, the way conversations paused, the subtle glances, the quiet questions about my real plans. We came from different worlds, different values, different definitions of success. And deep down, I wondered if they would ever believe in the dream I carried with me. I knew the evening was going to be uncomfortable, but I didn't expect it to be the moment that changed everything. Emily's family threw what they called a small dinner. But when we walked in, it felt more like a corporate gathering: polished floors, perfect lighting, and a room full of people who already knew who belonged. And who didn't? I tried to blend in, smiling, shaking hands, answering the usual questions. But somewhere deep inside, I felt a strange pressure building, like the night was quietly waiting to expose something. That moment came when her father tapped his glass and said, "Everyone, let's hear from Daniel. Emily says he's working on another one of his projects." Projects, plural, sighed. With that soft little smile people use when they're pretending to encourage you but actually reminding you of every time you stumbled. I opened my mouth to explain my startup. But Emily stepped forward first. She laughed lightly and said, "Oh, don't make it sound big. It's just his little software thing." Little. There it was again. A couple of her relatives nodded knowingly. One of her cousins added, "Hey, at least he keeps trying. Third idea this year, right?" Someone else whispered, "Maybe he'll land one eventually." They weren't loud comments. They were worse, quiet, controlled, the kind of whispers that feel polite on the surface but sting all the way through. Emily didn't defend me. She didn't correct them. She just stood there, smiling like the joke wasn't hurting anyone. I felt the heat crawl up my neck. My hands tightened around the glass I was holding. It wasn't anger yet, just a deep, sinking realization. She didn't believe in me. Not even a little dot in that moment. While everyone chuckled softly, something heavy settled inside my chest. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was clarity, painful, sharp, unmistakable clarity. I wasn't being included in their world. I was being tolerated. And as I stood there, forcing a smile, I made a quiet promise to myself. If they thought my dream was small, I would build something so real, so strong, that one day they would see exactly who they underestimated. I wish I could say the dinner incident was the worst of it. But sometimes life doesn't hit you all at once. Sometimes it breaks you in quiet pieces. A few days after that dinner, I went to Emily's house to pick her up. I walked in through the side door, the one her family said I could use whenever I wanted, though it always felt more like a back entrance for the help. I heard voices coming from the kitchen, Emily and her closest friend, Melissa. I wasn't trying to listen. I was about to step in and say hello. But then I heard my name. "I just wish he had a real job," Emily sighed. "Something stable. Something normal. My parents think he's too old to still be chasing little ideas." My heart dropped. Not because she had doubts, people have doubts, but because she never said any of this to me. She smiled in my face. "And save the truth for someone else." Melissa asked, "Are you sure he's the one you want to marry?" Emily's reply was soft, almost tired. "I don't know, I don't know if I can build a future on dreams." Dreams. The very thing she once said she admired about me. I stepped back before they saw me, swallowing the sting, pretending my world hadn't just shifted. Later that evening, her father pulled me aside in his office. He poured himself a drink, sat back, and said with a calm, steady voice, "Daniel, you're a good man. But Emily needs stability. You should consider something more practical. Know your place. You're not competing with people like us." He said it with a smile, the kind of smile that pretends to be advice, but lands like a warning. That was the moment it clicked. I didn't belong there. Not in their home, not in their plans, not in the future they were shaping for Emily. I drove home with a heavy chest, the city lights blurring past me. I wasn't angry yet, but the betrayal was beginning to take root, and deep down, a quiet voice kept whispering, if I didn't fight for my dream, no one else ever would. The night everything snapped didn't start with a fight. It started with a simple question, one that carried far more weight than Emily realized. We were sitting in her apartment, wedding magazines scattered across the table. She was excited, humming softly as she flipped through pages. For a moment, it felt peaceful, normal, like the future we'd planned was still possible. Then she said, casually, "So, have you thought more about working for my dad's company?" My heart tightened. Emily, I told you. I want to build my startup. I'm close to something real. She closed the magazine, the smile fading from her face. Daniel, I'm tired of hearing that. You've tried things before. They didn't work. My family is offering you stability. Why can't you just take it? The word take stung. Like her father's company was a life raft and I was drowning. I tried to stay calm. I'm not giving up my dream. Not this time. She stood up, arms folded. So your dream matters more than our future? That question hit like a punch. Because she wasn't really asking. She was accusing. Emily, I said quietly, why do you always talk about my ideas like they're toys? Why can't you respect what I'm trying to build? She scoffed. Because it's not real, Daniel. It's not steady. It's not good enough. You're almost 30. My parents think. I cut her off. I don't care what your parents think. I care what you think. She looked away. And that silence told me everything. Finally she said, I need someone dependable. Someone who fits into my family's world. If you want to be that person, you need to choose something secure. The room felt colder. Even her breath sounded distant. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just felt something collapse quietly inside me. The part that believed we were equals, partners, a team. In that moment, I realized we weren't standing on the same side of the future. She wasn't asking me to grow. She was asking me to shrink, and while she kept talking, I made a silent decision. I couldn't marry someone who doubted me more than strangers ever had. The night Emily told me to choose something secure, something inside me hardened. Not into anger, but into determination. If she couldn't see the value of my dream, then I needed to prove it to myself, quietly, on my own terms. So I doubled down. Every morning, I went to my day job like nothing had changed. But every night, when the city softened and most people turned off their lights, I turned mine on. Laptop open. Coffee brewing. Code spreading across my screen like the blueprint of a second life. I didn't tell Emily. I didn't tell her family. I didn't tell anyone who saw me as the guy with small ideas. But I did tell the people who mattered. The ones who believed. First was Marcus, an old friend from college who had lost his job and was desperate for a chance to build something real. Then came Jenna, a brilliant designer who said she'd join for almost nothing because she felt the spark in what I was building. And finally Leo, our operations guy, the calm voice who reminded us we weren't crazy for dreaming big. We weren't a big team. But we were united by something stronger than money, faith. The nights blurred together. We ate cheap takeout, argued over tiny details, and celebrated the smallest wins like they were major awards. And slowly, the dream started to breathe. Our first major break came when a small factory outside Milwaukee reached out. Their systems were outdated. They were losing money. They needed help. We offered them our platform for a fraction of the normal cost, because honestly, we just needed the chance. 2 weeks later, the factory's manager called us and said, "You saved us." That one sentence filled the room with a silence I'll never forget. A silence made of pride, relief, and disbelief that something we built from nothing was making a real impact. Soon, more factories reached out. Word spread. Contracts followed. And while I sat there, watching clients sign deals with the company Emily once called little, something inside me healed. This wasn't just a startup anymore. It was proof, living, growing proof. That belief isn't given. It's earned, built, and fought for. And I was only getting started. Success has a strange way of showing up quietly, almost like it wants to test if you're paying attention. A few months into growing my startup, we were finally gaining traction. More small factories were reaching out. More managers were thanking us for saving time, money, and stress. The momentum felt real. steady like the beginning of something big. Then, one night, while checking industry news, I saw a headline that made me pause. Wright and Sons faces declining profits amid system issues. Emily's family. Her father's pride. The company that had been in their blood for generations. At first, I thought it was just normal fluctuation. But each week, new articles appeared, small notes, quiet warnings, industry whispers, outdated inventory systems, slow turnaround times, mismanaged supply chains, employees frustrated because leadership refused to modernize. And I couldn't help thinking, of course they refused. People who believe they're at the top never imagine the ground shifting beneath them. One night, Marcus looked over my shoulder and said, "Isn't that Emily's family company? They could really use our software." I laughed softly, not out of mockery, but out of disbelief. Because he was right. Wright and Sons was exactly the kind of business our platform was made for. Factories struggling with old systems. Leadership ignoring warning signs. A company desperate for the very solution we had built. But I also knew something else. They would never come to me by choice. Not after the way they talked about my projects. Not after telling me to know my place. Still, part of me wondered what would happen if they ever reached out. Would they even recognize the company they once mocked? A week later, the answer came. Leo rushed into the office holding his phone. "Guys, Wright and Sons just submitted a request for a demo. They don't know it's us." My heart didn't race. It didn't jump, it just settled. Fate has a strange way of circling back. The company that once doubted me, the family that laughed at my dream, was now reaching out for help from the very vision they dismissed. And I knew then, this wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something far bigger. When Leo told me Wright and Sons had requested a demo, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. A quiet mix of disbelief and poetic timing. But I made one decision instantly. They couldn't know it was me. Not yet. So when the demo day arrived, I stayed in my office, watching through the small glass window as Marcus and Jenna set everything up in the conference room. Marcus whispered, "You sure you don't want to lead this?" I shook my head. "They need the software. They don't need to know who built it." He nodded, understanding more than I said. Minutes later, the screen lit up. 3 executives from Wright and Sons appeared on the call, people I had seen across dinner tables. People who once looked at me like I was a temporary guest in their perfect world. Emily's father wasn't on the call, but his second in command, a stern man named Harris, led the conversation. He sounded stressed. He sounded tired. And for the first time, he sounded humbled. "Our systems are falling behind," Harris admitted. "Production errors, delays. It's a mess. Can your software stabilize things?" Marcus answered confidently, "Absolutely. That's exactly what it was built for." I watched quietly as Harris leaned forward, taking notes. They weren't laughing anymore. They weren't questioning little projects. They were listening. Carefully. Over the next few weeks, Wright and Sons integrated our platform into their workflow. And almost immediately, the results showed. Fewer delays, better accuracy, lower costs. Every improvement came with another email, another call, another question. And here's the irony. The more they used our system, the more dependent they became on it. One night, Leo chuckled while reading a message. "Daniel, they want priority support. They're asking for upgrades. They're practically begging." Begging. The very company that once told me to know my place. But I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. Instead, I felt a growing tension inside me. A sense that the story wasn't done twisting. Because while they relied on our software, they still had no idea whose hands had built the thing keeping their business alive. And that truth, that hidden power, was only the beginning of the shift. The moment Wright and Sons became dependent on our software, something inside me shifted. Not into arrogance, but into awareness that for the first time in my life, they needed me. And they didn't even know it. One night while reviewing industry reports, I came across something that made me sit up straighter. Wright & Sons was losing investors. Quietly, steadily, almost desperately. Their outdated systems had pushed them into debt far deeper than they admitted publicly. Banks were pulling back. Smaller shareholders were starting to panic. And the company's value was dropping faster than anyone expected. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. Not out of excitement, but out of disbelief at the irony that the same people who once acted untouchable were now standing on shaky ground. I called Marcus and said, "We need to run numbers." All of them. Within hours, we had a plan taking shape. If Wright & Sons kept slipping, their stock would hit a point where small, quiet purchases wouldn't raise suspicion. And if we bought through a different company, a holding company, no one would ever connect the dots. So I created one. A name simple enough to mean nothing. A structure clean enough to avoid any eyes. And then I reached out to the perfect partner, someone with influence, but no ties to the Wrights. Private equity contact I had helped years before. He owed me, and he delivered. "Keep your name off everything," he warned. "We'll handle the front." And he did. Over the next few months, shares of Wright & Sons were bought in small, unnoticeable batches. Not enough to alarm anyone. Just enough to build a foundation. Meanwhile, my partner firm made larger, strategic purchases, giving the impression that they were the ones interested in controlling the struggling company. Piece by piece, quietly and visibly, the structure of a takeover began to form. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't celebrating. I was patient, because revenge isn't loud. Revenge is slow, calculated. A silent storm that gathers, strength where no one looks. And while Emily's family kept trying to save their sinking company, they never realized the truth. The person they once dismissed, the dream they once mocked, was slowly becoming the force preparing to own everything they built. Some endings don't arrive with chaos. Sometimes they come quietly, almost gently. Like a door closing itself. It was a Saturday afternoon when Emily called and asked to meet. Her voice sounded tense, sharp around the edges. I knew something was coming, but I didn't expect the moment that would end everything. We met at her apartment. As soon as I walked in, she crossed her arms and said, "Daniel, we need to talk." I nodded, waiting. She didn't waste time. "You haven't been supportive lately. I barely see you. You're always working on that software thing." She said, "That software thing," like it was a hobby I'd outgrown. I kept my voice calm. "Emily, this is important to me. We talked about supporting each other. I'm finally building something real." She shook her head. "It doesn't feel real. It feels like you're chasing another idea. And I'm tired of waiting for you to grow up." Grow up. The same words her father once used. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "If we're going to get married, you need to join my dad's company. It's the only stable path." "My parents think," I interrupted gently. "I'm not marrying your parents, Emily." Her jaw tightened. "You need to make a choice. Our future, or your project." My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. In that exact moment, everything became clear. "You don't respect what I'm building," I said softly. "You never did." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. When it falls apart again, don't say I didn't warn you." Her words didn't hurt this time. They revealed the truth. I took a slow breath. "Emily, we're done." She blinked, shocked. "You're ending this? Over a silly argument?" "No," I said. "I'm ending it because you stopped believing in me long before today." And then she laughed, that same small, cutting laugh from the dinner party. "Good luck with your little startup," she said. I walked out without another word. She thought it was the last time she'd ever speak to me. She didn't know that in just a few months, I would walk back into her life in a way she never saw coming. Some moments in life feel unreal. Not because they're impossible, but because they're the exact opposite of what everyone expected. Months after I ended things with Emily, news about Wright and Sons grew worse. Internal disputes, falling profits, investors pulling out, and the final blow. A quiet announcement that the company was open to selling a controlling stake. The empire they once bragged about was slipping through their fingers. My partner firm called me one evening and said, "It's time. They're vulnerable, and they need a buyer fast." The purchase happened in silence. No fanfare, no alarms. Just signatures, sealed documents, and a transfer that handed over decades of Wright family pride to a holding company they'd never heard of. My holding company. When the final papers cleared, my partner said with a grin, "Congratulations, Daniel. You own Wright and Sons." For a moment, I just sat there quiet, steady, processing the weight of those words. They mocked me for having small dreams. And now one of my dreams had bought their entire world. A week later, the board called an emergency meeting. They were expecting a stern investor, maybe some unfamiliar executive. Not me. I walked into the boardroom wearing the same calm expression I had the night Emily laughed at me. The same steady steps. But a very different man. The room went silent. Richard, Wright, Emily's father, stared at me like he couldn't make sense of what he was seeing. His voice cracked slightly when he asked, "Daniel, what are you doing here?" I sat at the head of the table. "Mr. Wright," I said gently, "I'm here because my holding company is now the majority owner of Wright and Sons." He looked stunned, speechless, destroyed in a way no harsh word could ever achieve. Some board members exchanged shocked glances. A few shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to react. And then slowly, Richard sank back into his chair. Everything they once dismissed, everything they laughed at, everything they underestimated, was now the very thing keeping their company alive. Revenge didn't need shouting. It didn't need anger. It only needed truth. And the truth was simple. I had become the owner they never believed I could be. I always thought the moment I became the owner of Wright and Sons would feel loud, explosive, like every emotion rising at once, but instead, it felt calm, almost peaceful, like the world had finally aligned in a way it was meant to. The confrontation with Emily came a few days later, not at a formal meeting, not in a dramatic scene, but in the lobby of the company her family once controlled. I had just finished speaking with a department head when I heard someone call my name, "Daniel?" I turned. Emily stood there, holding her purse tightly, eyes wide, like she was seeing a ghost. She walked toward me slowly. "I've been trying to reach you," she said, voice soft. "My mom told me." "You're the new owner?" Her voice cracked on the last word. I nodded. "Yes, for a while now." She swallowed hard. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say anything?" I met her eyes steady. "Because you never believed in this. You laughed at the idea of it. You told me to give it up." Her gaze dropped. "Daniel, I didn't know. I never imagined you'd build something this big." "That's the thing," I said quietly. "You didn't imagine it. But I did. And so did the people who chose to stand beside me. I didn't get here because you supported me. I got here in spite of the fact that you didn't." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her eyes glistened with a mix of shock and something that felt close to regret. "I never wanted to hurt you," she whispered. "I know," I replied. "But you did. And that hurt taught me something important. I don't need approval from people who can't see beyond their own comfort." She stepped closer. "Daniel, is there any chance?" I shook my head gently. "No, my life moved forward. And I'm exactly where I was meant to be." Emily stood frozen, unable to hide how overwhelmed she was. How stunned she was by the scope of everything I had built. She once mocked my dreams. Now she was standing inside one. Speechless. Owning Right and Sons wasn't about revenge anymore. Once the shock settled, once the dust cleared, I realized something important. If I was going to lead this company, I needed to rebuild the parts that actually mattered, not the pride. Not the legacy. Not the polished reputation the Wright family had protected for generations. But the people. The workers who kept the lights on. The ones who stayed loyal even when the company struggled. The ones who never had a seat at the fancy dinners where decisions were made. So that's where I started. I walked through every factory floor. Shook hands with every team lead. Listened, really listened to the problems they'd been warning about for years, and the truth was simple. The company's real foundation had never been the right name. It had always been these people. With my team's help, we modernized everything: smoother inventory systems, safer equipment, faster workflows. Not because it made us look good, but because it made their lives better. One afternoon, an older worker named Sam pulled me aside. He said, "Son, I've been here 30 years. This place hasn't changed like this since the beginning. Thank you." That moment meant more than any business headline ever could. As the months passed, my life finally felt steady, peaceful, not from money or status, but from finally standing in a place where I wasn't doubted or belittled. I found balance again. I slept better. I laughed more. And for the first time in years, I felt proud of the man I had become. I didn't need Emily. I didn't need her family's approval. I didn't need anyone to tell me my dream was real, because I had built something bigger than revenge. I had built a future based on purpose, respect, and growth. Looking back, the pain had shaped me, but it didn't define me. And standing there, watching workers finally feel valued, I realized something clear and steady. Sometimes life takes everything from you, just to give you back what truly matters. People ask me sometimes if taking over Wright and Sons was the revenge I wanted. If standing in the boardroom as the new owner made all the pain worth it. If seeing their stunned faces felt like victory. The truth is, those moments were powerful, yes. They were satisfying in a quiet, undeniable way. But they weren't the lesson. Not even close. The real lesson came later, when the noise faded, when the anger settled. When I finally had space to breathe again. It came when I realized I hadn't built everything to hurt Emily or her family. I built it to prove something to myself. To show that my dreams had value. To show that belief doesn't come from others, it comes from inside. Looking back now, I understand something I didn't understand before. You can't force someone to believe in you. Not a partner. Not a parent. Not a family who judges you from across a polished dinner table. But you can choose the people who do believe. You can choose the ones who stay, who support, who see what you're building even before it exists. Those are the people worth fighting for. The rest? Let them doubt you. Let them walk away. Let them think small while you grow. Because the sweetest kind of victory isn't loud. It isn't flashy. It isn't about proving someone wrong. It's about proving yourself right. Standing in the company I now owned. Watching workers finally feel respected, I realized something clear and steady. Revenge wasn't the ending. Growth was. Peace was. Self-respect was. If there's anything I want someone watching this to remember, it's this: believe in those who believe in you. Build your dreams with the people who lift you up, not the ones who tear you down. And never, ever let someone's doubt become your destiny. My story didn't end with their mockery. It ended with my truth, a truth I earned. One quiet step at a time. If this story hit you, don't leave just yet. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another dramatic twist. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been doubted by someone who should have believed in you?